Hello, hello. Welcome or welcome back, as the case may be. I'm Ellen Jimerson.
And I'm Johnny Skinner.
And this is Moving Parts,
the show where we investigate why children become trans.
Yes, and we are so happy that you're here. We already have a pretty good crowd, all things being equal, who have gathered. I do hope you all will put your heads in and say hello and those things. Just put your head in, don't stay out in the yard. And so now I think we're going to have a little abbreviated gender news segment, and then we will bring on Erin Friday, Esquire, who is a powerhouse attorney and parent in the transgender children movement. And I know you're wanting to get onto that, but we do want to give people a chance to gather. We've already had a couple of people making some comments in the chat, and that's awesome. So, Darla, I think we're ready. So I do want to say that we are going to have the abbreviated gender news segment, but Johnny and I, once we talk to Erin and let her go, Johnny and I will be here to actually give you a little bit more news about that and then see what you think. So first up, the Missouri governor has signed a bill banning hormones and surgeries for trans inmates. Missouri has enacted a new law restricting access to gender-affirming health care for incarcerated transgender people, marking a major shift in how the state's Department of Corrections can provide medical treatment. It was signed into law by Governor Mike Kehoe on 30 June and prohibits the use of state funds for hormone therapy and gender-affirming therapy surgeries intended for gender transition. So we'll come back to that if you want to. Second up, I thought this was fascinating. I don't know if you will, but women models were part of Paris Men's Fashion Week. Women models were part of the Paris Men's Fashion Week. Women were everywhere at Men's Fashion Week in Paris, walking co-ed runways and modeling menswear. Then gender blur was not happening on the margins. Sorry, should have turned my phone off.
Okay.
Even my family don't.
You need to unlock your iPhone.
Don't understand that I do a podcast every Tuesday at 7:00. Anyway, where was I? The gender blur was not happening on the margins. It was built into Paris Men's Fashion Week, which ended Sunday, when the multi-billion-dollar luxury industry shows what it thinks men will want next. It has reached menswear advertising too. A pregnant Rihanna became the face of Pharrell Williams' first Louis Vuitton men's campaign in 2023, appearing on a giant Paris billboard with her baby bump exposed and arms full of Vuitton bags. Isn't that interesting? And then it goes on. We can talk about androgyny and all the pink and the pearls that were everywhere. And I had some images worked up to show you about where high heels originated. They originated with Persian warriors way back when. And then they first, yeah, thank you, Darla. And those are not Persian warrior shoes. Those are Christian Louboutin shoes. And as you can see, they sell for $1,695. And they look an awful lot like the heels that you see in the portraits of King Louis XIV. But we'll come back to that later, and we may even talk about Trina's long heels, red bottoms, long heels, red bottoms. Okay, third, a complaint seeks answers on Scouting America's transgender policy after the Pentagon deal. A gay rights activist is suing the defense department to answer a simple question. Did Scouting America actually ban transgender members in a deal with the Pentagon? That to me also is very interesting. And
interesting.
What?
I said that is very interesting.
Yeah, there's so much going on that we don't hear that much about. So that's it for gender news for right now. And I'm going to now introduce our extremely wonderful guest, a powerhouse, as I said. And she's one of those people who is not taking it sitting down. And she has, in some ways, come out swinging. It took her a minute, but this is Erin Friday. We can add her to the, let's see. How do you do that, Darla? There you go. Thank you, Darla. And I should have said, we also are very grateful for Darla in the booth. Yeah, we couldn't function without her. Erin Friday is an attorney and a mother in California. She first encountered the trans movement when her daughter brought home what she was learning in her 7th grade sex ed class in her public school. Erin started hearing about the genderbread man and the notion that there is a gender spectrum connecting G.I. Joe on the male end of the spectrum to Barbie on the female end. She learned new made-up words like demiboy and pansexual. Her daughter and 5 of her friends announced they were rejecting the label female in favor of these and other new made-up labels. Erin, who had been a volunteer of the year at her daughter's school and knew the teachers pretty well, objected and said so in the school's classes being led by a third party. In other words, not led by teachers. I think that's what she meant. Prior to her daughter announcing she was trans, her daughter had slid into severe mental health issues, including depression. They took her to a psychologist with the University of California at San Francisco. The doctor, who had been a believer in the satanic panic, and you may or may not know what that was, I do, asked Erin whether she would prefer to have what we've heard by now as a repeating theme. She asked her, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? In 2020, Child Protective Services showed up at her door, threatening to take her daughter because Erin would not affirm that the 13-year-old was trans. Moving the introduction along, Erin went on to become a prominent advocate for children who say they are trans and for their parents. She found Our Duty, an organization to help and advocate for parents struggling with their children caught up in this movement, has spoken before the California legislature and on Capitol Hill against a number of bills and authoring other bills. Erin has strong views on schools participating in the indoctrination of children, on teachers keeping secrets from parents about their children, family court, transgender sanctuary states, and boys and girls sports. Erin, we welcome you enthusiastically. We're here to listen to all the things you have to say with the expectation that people listening will take everything you have to say to heart. The floor is yours. Would you like to talk about anything in particular or what? How would you like to?
Let me just say that I did not take my daughter to UCSF. I did take her to a different therapist, but that therapist said similar things, as they all do.
Similar,
They all use the suicide trope to coerce a parent to go along with the transgender identity. In my situation, the local therapist. Well, I tried to find one that would not be an affirming therapist or a psychiatrist, which is nearly impossible in California. And the one who first spoke to my daughter gave me my daughter will commit suicide unless I transition her. And then when I questioned the study, when I asked her just even give me the name of the study, she couldn't, which was telling in and of itself. You're going to cite to something so horrific and so frightening to a parent, and then you can't even name the study. Well, she got fired.
Yeah, I mean, you're being paid, and you've got the lives of people in your hands who are looking for advice, and you cite information, but you can't cite the study.
That's right.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's this common bluff that therapists within this gender affirming space, I guess you could call it, tend to use, like they used in my own case. It was the same thing. You could but vice versa. You could have a living daughter or a dead son. And I'm sure if my mom had pushed on the study, they would have totally blanked, because they totally rely on that emotional reaction to loop parents into this. I'm wondering, what was your experience like when your daughter, she had come into these ideas at school? What was your experience like when you first started finding out about this? Like what she was learning at school? What was that like for you? Because I know that was sort of your initial exposure to this space before your advocacy came along.
Yeah, so I was pretty gobsmacked with the fact that her sex ed curriculum was including an hour of gender identity. Like the intro said, I mean, I lived at the school. I was that parent who drove every class trip and knew all the teachers by name, socialized with them. And so I was really taken aback that our school would have a 5-hour sex ed curriculum, with the last hour being about this concept of having a gender identity. And, shame on me for not learning about the sex ed curriculum beforehand. But this was, I think, 2018 or so. And when I looked at the curriculum and saw that they had arrows pointing to the head of a female saying male brain on a female body, I was like, okay, this is just garbage. Let me go to the parenting class about this. And there were 2 men up there who basically told everyone in the audience that we're all trans, because if you're not G.I. Joe or Barbie, and they actually use those terms, then you're somewhere on the spectrum. Well, I raised my hand. I said, so I'm trans. And I did not know that I wasn't allowed to be honest and forthright. And, everybody was staring at me, and I quite frankly, I didn't care, because it was so nonsensical to me, the things that they were saying. But I didn't think much of it then. I mean, it was 7th grade. I did, question my daughter on why she's now saying that she's somewhere on the LGBTQ, spectrum. But and all of her friends did it, and I kind of thought, okay, they just got, they're just trying to escape being a white, straight girl, fit into some club. And that was 7th grade. So she was 11 or 12. And then girls started to come over to my house with blonde hair down to their rear ends, saying that, taking on a male name, and my daughter whispering, you need to use he, him, which I refused to do. I refused to buy into the nonsense. And then as my daughter struggled over COVID with depression and didn't like the changes in her body, then she said she was a boy. And I reacted very matter of fact. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
That's silly. All right, now get your homework done.
Low key. low key.
Well, you were
You
setting
had a
strong
low key.
boundaries like a parent is supposed to do, especially when our children are exposed to very dangerous ideas, like this.
Well, Johnny, I didn't even know how dangerous it was. I mean, I think that's maybe, I mean, I was so naive. I was like, what are you talking about? Like this is really silly. And I didn't realize how dangerous it was until later when she started to, wear a binder that people dropped off at our house, because I certainly wouldn't buy her anything like that. I used to go in her room and take them and, cut them up, which is really hard to do. They're really thick. And then they'd come out of the dryer. I'm like, I don't know, the washing machine ate it or something. Or I would just throw them out because it was like, I wasn't, it's like leaving cocaine in their bedroom. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So I think you described your daughter as having sunk into a deep depression. And I don't want to jump over that too quick, because I think most of us would count that as a comorbidity that would need looking into. Did I also read she was on the autism spectrum or not?
No,
Other people.
no. There was a time frame, and I think it still exists, where all these young kids, and mostly girls, and then it moved over to the boys, all wanted a diagnosis. They all wanted a mental health diagnosis. They wanted to be ADHD. They wanted to be autistic. They wanted to be a cutter. They wanted Tourette's. It was a way of escaping, like being normal, and using, like, became a pejorative term. And they wanted to escape it. They needed to have some kind of victim status. But my daughter did get deeply depressed, and that really coincided with the trans identity. And because really what a trans identity is, and Johnny, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, is it's looking in the mirror and saying, oh my God, I am born in the wrong body. Not that not the simple things, during puberty, where it's like I have a pimple on my forehead, everybody's looking at my pimple. It is your entire body is wrong. Everything is wrong with you. I mean, what a horrible way to go about your day is, I was born wrong. And then having the adults around you saying, yeah, you were totally born wrong. I mean, I don't know what could cause more depression than that, is that everything is wrong with you. And then you layer on top of it, if your parent is not affirming that wrongness, then your parent doesn't love you. And your parent is a bigot, and your parent is rejecting you. So you have, I'm wrong, my parent doesn't like me. And then you have the third, which is the suicide, because these kids are taught, they're taught that they will commit suicide if they don't transition. So you have a trifecta of self-loathing that is going to spin any human being out, terribly. So yeah, the depression was immense, to the point of, not getting out of bed. And Johnny, I'm sure when you looked in the mirror, you felt the same thing, like, I'm wrong.
Oh yeah.
Wrong.
For those listening, it's almost like if you take like the insecurity, like your example with like, oh no, everyone's looking at my pimple. Imagine if that insecurity became mapped over your entire body. I often describe it for myself as like, because for me, my dysphoria substantially increased after my meetings with my gender therapist. Right. And I often use the example, it's like she took gasoline and poured it on the fire. Like, it just made my self-esteem completely crash. And I mean, you're spot on, it just exacerbated, depression, anxiety, just it was this incredible self-loathing. And then you have this lie on, well, if you don't transition as soon as possible, you won't have a livable life. So half of trans kids just commit suicide if they don't do this, of which the implicit message is, if you don't do this, your only other option is death.
Is correct. And then you also layer on top of it, your whole day is whether you are passing, whether somebody calls you he, him, they, them, zers, them, whatever kind of made up pronoun, and whether you are disrespected because someone says, calls you a girl. So you add all that layer, and puberty is a tough, I remember puberty. It was a tough time in everyone's lives. And it was COVID, which made it doubly worse.
Yeah,
isolated.
COVID made everyone depressed.
I know. I mean, totally. I don't want anyone to know what my scale said over COVID, but let's just say it wasn't pretty. So that's kind of what happened. And so these kids actually do become more suicidal because it's created. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they create a dysphoric child. They create a child who hates themselves. And that's what transgenderism is. It's rejection of self.
Yeah. They tell you you're born wrong, but it's okay because we can fix it for you.
We can fix you just with a
hormones
knife
and surgery.
That's right. With a lifelong of drugs, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no biggie.
Right. So that's how we went down the rabbit hole, and it was a good year and a half, 2 years of her, having that trans identity, cutting her hair, all the different hair colors, the typical uniform, getting rid of all of her female clothes and replacing them with big baggy sweatshirts. I didn't buy male clothes for her. I refused. I did kind of the opposite of what everyone said to do, which was, be more nuanced, and I refused. I banked on the fact that my daughter at some point respected me. And if she saw I suddenly went crazy against this, that there must be something to it. And I would repeat relentlessly that I will never abuse a child. I will not abuse her friends. And calling them a fake name and telling them that they're born wrong, to me, was the epitome of abuse, and I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for her. I wouldn't do it for friends. And, some friends wouldn't come over to my house anymore, and I was A-okay with that. But I was not going to lie to them. I was not going to be a part of their demise, nor was I going to be a part of my own daughter's demise. But it was rough because these kids are taught by their teachers that we, parents who hold the line, we're the abusive ones. And they create this giant chasm between the parent and the child, which is really disruptive to a child. I mean, we used to tease my brothers and sisters, "You're adopted, ha ha ha," you would make them cry.
Yeah.
But imagine,
always a great joke.
yeah, always. But imagine a teacher saying, your mom is dangerous. She's dangerous to you. Well, a child wants to love their parents. That's the closest relationship there is.
I'm really curious, Erin, your parenting through all of this is so different from the parents that I've known that have been in this. I don't think I've ever come across a parent who said, "No, you're not. You're not a boy. You're a woman. You're a girl. That's perfectly okay." But the lengths that people that I know have gone to be supportive of their children has just been absurd to me. Do you have any feel for why you were able to just be a parent and not be intimidated and thrown and, and just be a parent setting boundaries? Do you have any thoughts on what made you different in that respect?
Well, I think I'm always swimming upstream, and I don't take anything at face value.
Yeah.
I come from a family of lawyers and doctors, and so I know
Oh.
that doctors have clay feet. They don't have all the answers, and so I ask a lot of questions. Like I said, when the therapist said that there's a 40% chance that my daughter would commit suicide, I asked about the study, and she couldn't answer it, and so that immediately I was like, "You're a dum-dum." I can't listen to anything that you say.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
just threw out, like, it's not like you threw out, low-fat milk is better for you. You just threw out suicide, and you can't tell me anything about that study. You don't even know how many kids were in it, what the question was. She couldn't answer anything. And I said, okay, you read a headline.
Yeah.
You read a headline, and I read the articles. I read a ton, and I think parents, unfortunately, we grew up in an era where parents were told to follow their children's lead.
Yeah.
Especially if you live in a liberal state, and I grew up where my parents led me.
Yeah.
We had strict rules in my house. Now I broke a lot of them, but we had strict rules. And as a child and as a teenager, I didn't get to decide things. My parents decided where I went to high school. I had I could ask, but it was parents. And we have given up our parenting to, this stupid thing. And also out of fear. We were at a preschool with my daughter where they told me we weren't allowed to say the word no. Well, yeah, I'm going to say the word no. And, children don't get to decide things. And parents, there's a really good book. There's a great book that I read that was really helpful called Hold On to Your Kids. And I read only half of it because it's really, really big. But I read the second half, and it's how to keep that connection with your child and make sure that you are the one with the closest relationship. Because, now we're parenting against the internet with millions and millions of people out there saying, you be you. Go for it. Strangers. A child needs to learn that their parents' opinion is the most valued and the most important, and it's hard to do.
It's like we feel like we have to. So many parents, I don't, but a lot of parents who are basically a good bit younger than I am feel like even when it comes to something like where they go to university, they have to be allowed to go to an expensive, faraway university. I know when I was 18 or 17 and going to university, there was no question. I was going to go to the university where my father was on the faculty, meaning it was free. So it never crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind to ask to go. Same with Al. His parents were on the mission field. And when he came back, his dad said, well, you can apply anywhere you want to apply, but you're going to go to a Southern Baptist university where it's going to be free. So, I mean, to me, those things are just, I don't get it.
Yeah, I kind of understand though, because like in this world now, so many parents just want a gentle parent, and they don't want everyone is so afraid of, offending their child, or, like what if I say no and it causes them lasting trauma? It's like I don't know we've normalized the word trauma so much that I feel like so many parents nowadays, especially, you know, of a younger generation, like I would say starting about around like your generation, Erin, and down to my generation, they're just so afraid of, you know, offending their child or setting strong boundaries. They're more concerned with being their child's friend than being their
That's
safekeeper.
Yeah, and that's really important. So there is a time frame for when a parent needs to be at their best, when they have to put up those boundaries. I mean, it's easy when the children are little, right? You're controlling them, you control where they're going and what they're doing. It's when they start to get that autonomy at 11 and 12 that the parent really has to be boundary setting. And you're not supposed to be friends with your child then. They're supposed to love and respect you, but they are not your friend. It's really great. I'm on the other side of it. So my children are in their 20s and now we're friends. And it's wonderful. But over those high school periods, our job is to say no. And I'll tell you, it is really, really difficult when you have a trans-identified child. My daughter spit so much venom at me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a daily how much she hates me. Her friends hated me. Wickedly rude to me, horrible. And there was certainly days where I wanted to just give up and say, go ruin yourself. I don't care, because you're really taking a lashing, but you need to take that as a parent. That's love, to always speak truth and be confident enough that on the other end, you will have saved her or him. I mean, I have parents who, that I'm friends with, who save their children and they don't have a relationship with their child anymore, but they save their child, and that parent will do it over again. If they had to, they would do it. And that's what I said to myself. If I can get her over this trans identity, she doesn't ever have to talk to me again. It will crush me.
Yeah.
But I will have saved her the pain, because her life was more, and always is, more important than mine. It's more important than my happiness. I can be miserable knowing that I saved my daughter. So parents are afraid of it. They're afraid to say, no, I'm not paying for college if you go on testosterone.
Yeah.
Not gonna do it. Makes the child think.
Yeah. Oh, it's so difficult, but I think you have been very wise in that, and I'm so happy that your daughter has come through it. Talk to us about what it was like, please, to have child protective services show up at your door.
Well, that was an eye-opening experience. I mean, I was cast in the blue, dyed blue, liberal, New York Times, CNN, you name it all. And I really didn't know that going against the grain, going against this trans ideology, was verboten. That schools would lie to me. When I called the school, her public school, and I said, stop calling her a male name and using male pronouns, and they said, oh, the law requires it. And I, of course, asked what law it was, and they couldn't cite to it. Shocker.
Yeah.
Of course they can't. But that school made it very clear that they were the safe space and I was the unsafe space.
Yeah.
Despite the fact my daughter wasn't even going to school, it was COVID. So, like, the comedy, the irony of this.
The irony, yeah.
She wasn't even in the classroom.
Well, there again, you come back to, you read a headline. You all read headlines. You're not even thinking. This makes no sense.
define the word safe. Who is she?
Yeah.
Who are you keeping her safe from?
Yeah.
From
Are
me?
you feeding
From,
her? Are
from
you
me, apparently?
housing? Are you
Um,
buying her clothes and you feeding her? Or are you? What makes you so safe?
Well,
Yeah.
I think this really speaks to the aggressiveness of this ideology too, to, for lack of a better term, butt into
Good
your
point.
guys' business and have the gall to tell you who is safe, who your child is safe with and who she isn't safe with.
Yeah.
That it's very reminiscent of predatory ideologies with that degree of overreach and, boundary breaching.
and they could care less about my daughter. They'd never met her.
Right.
She was starting her freshman year. She never stepped foot in that class. They
Yeah.
didn't care whether she was safe or not. They were just parroting statements that they have heard. We are required to say that. We're going to say this. I asked them, tell me anything about my daughter. She fat, skinny, tall? What's her favorite ice cream? And they couldn't answer it. Of course they could. They knew nothing of my kid, but they did send Child Protective Services to my house. And I honestly was super naive. I said to the social worker, I'm like, get this, my daughter thinks she's a boy. Isn't that weird? I didn't know.
Yeah.
But, I think the reason why Child Protective Services didn't come back or really open up a file on me was because I was an attorney, and I said that like 1,000 times. And once CPS left, followed by the police also came, I realized that the public school, I needed to pull her from the public school. So I immediately disenrolled her and sent her to a private school. I mean, I wasn't going to play that game. That school thought they were a better parent than me. Well, then she's out of that school. And so I did
That's
things
just
very
amazing, the way
quickly.
in which you just took the bull by the horns step by step. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest insult that you can ever pay me is to call me a bad parent.
Yeah.
And you don't control my child. I do.
So I do want to interrupt real quickly. It is so important that we have people like Erin on the show, that we have Johnny as a co-host. So please, we have a good crowd. We really need you to like this episode. We need you to share it far and wide, and we need you to subscribe to our podcast. And before we move along, I think Darla put in the chat, the book you recommended is Hold On to Your Kids by Gordon Neufeld, Neufeld, PhD, and Gabor Mate, MD, who is just, Gabor Mate is another one of those people that you need to have in your life, probably. Okay,
yeah.
so.
And I have a book behind me here that I used too, which is Desist, Detrans, and Detox. It's a very small book, and it was my Bible as far as setting boundaries for my child, things that I would not do, what I refused to do, and understanding that using the name and the pronoun, what that leads to, and how dangerous that is. That if you give an inch, you give a foot, because it's never enough, right? It's never enough. They always have to move along, because no one can change sex. Let's be clear about that. Transitioning does not, undergoing any of these interventions does not make your depression better, does not make you feel better. It makes you feel worse. But you're told, like Johnny, you were told, like, if you just do this, if you just move on to estrogen, you're going to feel better. And so it's always more. It always progresses further along. So you never give the first step.
And that's such an important point, because I feel like so many people will, think of social transition as like a harmless intervention, but especially when it comes to, children and adolescents, it really is not, because we don't, at that age, you don't have a stable identity yet. You're going through your identity formation. So I feel like this social transition only predisposes them more into falling into this this unfortunate medical scandal. It causes these kids to ruminate more on the very features that they're being told are wrong. And you know, I just, we cannot stress enough how harmful these interventions are. Social transition is not this light matter that I see far too many people make it out to be.
Yeah.
Even within gender critical spaces, I've heard some people,
Yeah, no, it's step one, and even though it's reversible, it just concretizes the self-loathing. And if you can convince your parent or the adults around you that you're actually a different sex, who's going to hold the line?
Yeah.
How do they come back? How do they come back from that? And it's a lot of the parents that I know who's gotten their children out of this, or children have desisted. They also these kids need a break. They need a clean break. So if they're going to school as a trans kid, it's really hard to come back the next year and say, "Oh, just kidding. I'm actually a boy." Because they're getting accolades, they're getting special treatment, and it's, kids have a lot harder time saying I'm wrong or I changed my mind. They dig in. I thought you were trans. Well, you have to stay trans then forever. It's like,
and imagine the awkwardness if, God forbid, because at least in my experience in high school, they were pushing me into female spaces, and thank goodness I had enough foresight to not partake in that. But some of these kids don't. And then they go into those spaces, and imagine the shame and the humiliation of going back and saying, "Oh, I was wrong. I was actually just a man in your space. My bad." That's so difficult for people to do and to accept and to take on that shame and to face that, especially, an adolescent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kids need a break. They need to switch schools. I mean, I tell parents to move. They need a total break, because it's embarrassing for them to then say, you used to police my pronouns and now you want to go back to she, her.
Yeah.
It's hard.
So Desist, Detrans, and Detox is by Maria Keffler, Keffler. I'm sure there'll be, and I will try to remember to put these things in the show notes, if you forget.
Yeah. So
what about, I'm sorry, Johnny.
No, you're good.
I'm keeping my eye on the time and wondering, talk to us about, if you're ready to move on, family court. You have strong views on family court, I understand.
Well, yes. Look, there's a whole Genderbread, a cult who wants this to continue. Trans-identified kids are created. They're not born. They are They are created. So why are they created? Because they are a revenue stream.
Oh, yeah.
They also are cover for those who have fetishes or sexual paraphilias. So they need to keep creating them. They want to normalize this. We're normal because kids are this way. So they're created, and they have to keep this going. So if a parent doesn't go along, the courts try to step in. Now, judges have been trained for now almost 2 decades to look at parents like me as abusive. So family courts are the kind of the lowest type of judge too, right? As far as intellect, nobody really wants to be a family law judge. It's a painful position. But they get trained, and they got trained by the ACLU or, all these gender gender groups, all the social workers have been trained on this, and the social workers go to the family courts and they tell the judge, this parent is a bad parent because they won't support their trans child. And they do this because they can take the child from the parent pretty readily now, claiming emotional distress, and that's mostly in blue states, although it's in red states too. And then that child is put into foster care. And once that child is in foster care, in half of the states, that child has rights to obtain sex rejecting interventions. And so a child are now being trained. They're not just being trained, that they're born in the wrong body. They're being trained to make trumped up abuse claims against their parents, so that they can get into the child welfare apparatus and get on hormones and surgeries paid for by the state. And it's it's just this circle of taking these kids, and then there's so much money to be made. We talk about the Somali, with the childcare in Minnesota. Well, we have the same thing. We have the same thing in gender. We have kids being taken away, and they are going through the foster care system or the runaway pathway. And then these nonprofit runaway places are going to the government and getting all this money for these, trans kids that were tossed out by their parents. Well, they're not tossed out by their parents. I know of no parent, and I've spoken to thousands. There's no parent that is rejecting their child because they say they're trans. That is another false narrative. These kids run away. They're told to run away. My daughter served me with emancipation papers. How would she know how to get those? She's smart, but she's not that smart. It's some adult teaching her this stuff.
Even that there was such a thing as emancipation papers.
She didn't even know what the words meant.
Yeah.
But this is a way to take the kids, and then the family courts slow walk these cases. So the kid is 16 and is temporarily taken away from the parents. The parents are jumping through hoops, paying tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, parenting classes. A year later, they're finally having the trial. Well, the kid's now 17 and a half, and the court says, well, he's about 18 now. So so they push it out to ensure that the child keeps that trans identity. They want these kids not to get well. I mean, we have to think about that for a second, that the system is set up so that gender dysphoria, which, I think is a BS term in and of itself, but that it can only be resolved by medicalization. They want them to stay trans. Once they say they're trans for life. No getting off, as opposed to any other illness. We would say you have depression. We hope that you get over your depression. We're going to work towards happiness instead of leaning into the mental health issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, there was a lot there.
No. I'm trying to think where to go next because
if I may interject, I just would like to say, it's all so important because this is something that so many people claim isn't happening, but it very much is. Even my doctors, to push my mother through to eventually agree to stuff, which it's kind of, hot ground as to whether or not she did agree given the amount of blackmail and manipulation. But one of the things they said was, if you're not a supportive home, we could always step in and find him one. And then within the trans community, you have, like you said, where your daughter had served you with emancipation papers. Well, there are people within the community that will talk to teenagers about this. I remember witnessing this at various out centers and PFLAG groups that, I had gone to for support over the years. And if they feel like you're in a home that isn't 100% affirming and supportive of this across the board, then they will fully start talking to you like, are you sure you're safe at home? Are you sure you're comfortable? Are you sure you don't want us to help you get out of there because it sounds like you're being abused? You know, it's just total emotional manipulation through this whole community. That's where I was saying earlier with how aggressive this ideology is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's
And
truly like a Pandora's box has been opened
yeah.
in regards to this movement. It's just so
So we
horrific.
have to,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We don't always hear each other. There's a delay between with us. So I don't mean to talk over you, Johnny, but I was thinking Erin has just touched on so many things, as have you. And so she's a lawyer. And so there's some observations that she's able to make about the legal system. But we're also talking about the profit making motive. And for me, I think a key question always is who benefits? Where's the money going? So we know the hospitals are making bank. And as you've said, you know, there's an incentive to have more kids be trans so that they're in that they contribute to the money pipeline. Do you have a feel, Erin, for where all of this came from to begin with? Did it come from the pharmaceuticals? Did it come from the politicians? Did it come from the hospitals?
No,
From?
no. I think the pharmaceuticals profited along the way and have stayed mum about it because none of these, all of these drugs are off label, and they've done a relatively decent job of staying out of the fray. Although we'll see what the FTC has to say about that, because there are some puberty blocker manufacturers that I think are in the firing line. But I think they just sat around and just reaped the monetary benefits. Where it really began was with a bunch of men who are AGPs, that is autogynephilic, men who have sexual fetishes and perversion, and believe that they are women because it turns them on, and it also provides them access to women's spaces. So they were the ones really leading this charge, and it's been going on for. I traced it to California to 1999. You look at these nonprofits that used to be gay rights, and they all have switched to be trans rights. They're not even recognizable. You have the Human Rights Campaign. They bring in $78 million a year. I mean, that's just one. LGBTQ LA Center brings in another like 60 million. I mean, they are funded out the wazoo. They're funded by the federal government. They're funded by state government, and they're funded by a bunch of billionaires who are trans identified. There's a lot of these men out there that are just pumping this money out there to keep this going, because these kids provide them cover. And to get gross, I'm going to get gross. But you take a Johnny who's a handsome young man, and you put him on puberty blockers and estrogen, and he doesn't age.
Yeah.
He's a 22-year-old man who looks like, a teenager. And I know men who have been put on cross-sex hormones at the age of 18, and they're 40 some years old, and I'm jealous of their skin. But there's also a really gross underbelly darkness to this, is to keep young boys looking like little boys, even though they're of consent age. There's, putting a girl on testosterone. Females naturally, we're kind of the no's. We say no more often than we say yes to sexual interludes. Well, put a girl on testosterone, and that switches. because it really does affect, it affects their libido. And so there's a dirty underbelly of this that is pedophilia. And we see this with the number of trans-identified males that are pedophiles. The connection's there.
Yeah.
Well, and I would even go so far as to say even some of the men who, maybe don't present as autogynephilic, who support this stuff for kids, are men that are attracted to those of us who were on blockers. This was something that I've touched on in the past, vaguely in my interviews. But like my dating life, when I had come of age as a trans woman, it was all, very wealthy, older men. Many of them had particular support for puberty blockers and hormones in the youth. And it's because that was what they were attracted to. And many of them would rationalize it as well, this is doing you guys a favor. But it, of course, obviously it wasn't. It was totally their own rationalization of things. And, they discussed this in the Epstein files as well. He was emailing a famous biologist who I won't name because I don't want to get us into any kind of like legal grounds there, but he was emailing a famous biologist and discussing looping young boys in at younger ages, and how they could shape and mold their bodies to ultimately what they thought was attractive. And this is a dark underbelly in the sphere that I'm very glad that you brought up, because it's so dark. So many people don't want to talk about it, but it's very real, and I think makes up a substantial support base of for these interventions for children.
Yeah, it's gross. So. It's gross. There's a lot of money on the other side. Not so much money on our side.
Yeah.
I actually have that man's name in my notes.
From the Epstein files?
Yeah.
I can mention it if you're...
Oh, do you know? I'm not worried about it.
It was, I believe it was Robert Trivers. He's, I believe, an evolutionary biologist, and he was discussing with Epstein how they could loop in these kids younger and younger and younger.
Yeah. I looked at the WPATH files. I looked up a couple of the authors of the children and adolescent and non-binary section. And I found one fellow who, I found him in FetLife. He wears metal diapers. And this is the person who is advising on how to treat kids with gender dysphoria or gender confusion. There was a whole section on eunuchs, and Redux does a great job of kind of ripping that apart. So there's a really dirty aspect to what trans is. This isn't natural. Like I said, they are creating trans-identified kids, and it sweeps up the kids who are autistic, the kids who are a little funky, little quirky, little odd. The kids who are going to grow up to be really cool adults if we don't mess with them. It's not the cool kid cheerleader who gets caught up in this. It's the quirky, different thinker who doesn't feel like they fit in, and then they can suddenly be something that can be celebrated. It goes after, like Johnny goes after a lot of gay kids. There's a lot of gay kids as kids who think that they were born in the wrong body because they don't understand their attraction, or why they have a propensity to like girly things even though they're a boy, or boy things even though they're a girl. So there's they get swept up in this, and disgustingly, we saw, I think over the weekend, they dressed up a bunch of Down syndrome kids.
Yes. Holy cow.
As drag performers, and it's a fetish. It's really, really disgusting.
It is that infuriated me.
I mean,
Is there no depth, no bar below which the people will not fall? Yes. Did you see that, Johnny?
I did, unfortunately. I feel like every time I open X now, I lose a little bit of my innocence that's left.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I did see that, and it did feel very exploitative.
It was
'Cause
maybe
even
like
just
8
watching some
people.
of the mannerisms of the people that were in this video, it felt very it felt like they were trained to act like that.
I mean, abuse, exploitive, however you want to look at it. They didn't come up with that idea.
No.
Somebody came up with the idea and the costumes and the makeup for them.
Someone said,
By
hey,
the way,
this would be fun. Just
this
let
will
us
be
dress you up.
fun.
Yeah, totally.
Robert Trivers was the name of that biologist.
Yeah.
Who was in communication with Epstein. I don't want to say, you know, what that was about, because I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it is just, if you can figure out, you know, if you can figure out what the source is, and it could be multiple sources, and you can figure out where the money is coming from, it makes it easy, but it would be a whole lot simpler just to stop it without understanding all that. Let the historians work it out, you know, in the future. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's just invaded every institution, and that's why it's so difficult to stamp it out, because what we really need is, you know, I think personally, one of the biggest answers is to get it out of the schools, because it's the schools that are creating these kids. And until we do that, they're just going to be, they're going to be pushed into that. You can walk into any library over Pride Month, which shouldn't be a thing. And all the public libraries are filled with trans books. They're feeding this to kindergartners. And so these kids are being raised thinking that they can become a different sex, that they could be born wrong, that their bodies don't mean anything. And when they get discomfort at age 11 and 12, then they can just hop out.
Yeah, there have been so many. Once it has been looked at very closely by historians, I think they will pinpoint a number of things. And one of the things that I have experienced is how academia changed. There's a huge difference in how the university was when I was getting my PhD, in terms of reading and understanding. And when I went to Vanderbilt 20 years later to get a master's in theological studies, where we were not required to read a single book, that whole program. And it was all about taking apart, you know, this cis white, you know, be quiet if you're white, that kind of thing. It's the academy. It's and the people coming out of those institutions, of course, go on to pastor churches. They go on to other elite universities to teach. They write books. So I think, you know, all of that that went on in that. It's just, there's so many threads that you could pull out. But what you've talked about is something that it is so dark, and it's so, I don't know, secretive, but I mean, you know about it, so it's not that secret. So, I mean, the journalist ought to be jumping on that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Sorry. That's another thing. Journalism doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I'm like you. I used to think the New York Times, well, you know, the paper of record. And then I learned that it wasn't at all, because of my involvement in another field, which I think is related, but yeah, it's just
well, I think people need to be bold and be unafraid. And we really have the numbers on our side, whether they have the money or not. I don't really care. I don't get paid for what I do. I don't make a penny. In fact, I pay for the privilege of fighting for people. But if everybody stood up who was against this and didn't just, shake their head in disbelief and then go merrily on their way, this would have been over a decade ago. It wouldn't have been to this point of where we have boys in girls' bathrooms masturbating and
yeah.
Girls playing on sports teams with boys competing against them, hiding against them. If everybody just stood up and say no, and especially, we need the dads to protect their daughters, and not be afraid of being called a toxic man.
Yeah.
Take the names. Let's go back to sticks and stones. I could really care less what people call me.
Yeah, whatever happened to sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
That's right, because they can't fire us all. And I think that's happening. I think we see that more in the zeitgeist of, people are feeling that they can be public about what they believe about this more so than ever. And I think that's going to continue because it got to a place of absolute absurdity when we see a boy with, kabuki style makeup on, with his Twinkie knees knocked together, taking trophies from girls here in California or sharing the podium with the rightly winner. People are done with it, and I think people just need to get loud and vote based on this. Even if you were like me, a full-fledged Democrat, I vote Republican solely because we cannot move the needle if we keep putting these people back into office. That's all politicians care about. If you understand that a politician only cares about whether they are elected again, that's all they care about. And if they are being rewarded by pushing this trans stuff, then they're going to keep pushing it, even if they don't believe it, because most of them, they don't believe in this, but they're willing to sacrifice a Johnny. They're willing to sacrifice my daughter. For their seat. They don't care. They're the weird kids. They're the,
They haven't even thought about it. They haven't really thought about it.
They don't care.
It's just they don't care enough to think about it. It's the insouciance and the carelessness of people who have this power. Erin, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. And I told you that we wouldn't keep you much past an hour. So unless do you have like a closing thought or a closing, an ask from our listeners?
Sure. So for the listeners who are struggling, that have kids that are struggling with gender confusion, there's a lot of parent groups out there. Our duty is not that type of parent support, although we feed into other groups. So you're welcome to reach out to ourdutyusa.org. We also help parents find lawyers if they want to sue, which the lawsuits are going to really move the needle. And then when you're ready to get active, when you're tired of crying, when you're tired of, come to us and we'll get you active, because we need everybody's voice in this. You don't have to have any skill sets. It's not, I'm a lawyer, but what I did in my previous life doesn't, it travels a little bit into what I do now, but I was a construction law attorney, so nothing really the same. But yeah, so it's, and for parents who want to listen to desistance stories, I think it's really important for them not to just hear my voice. GenSpect, I did a series of parents whose kids got out of the trans identity, and you'll see the patterns of what parents did to help lead their child out. I highly recommend it. And there's, parents of older kids, parents of younger kids, parents of boys, parents of girls on how they got their kids out. So with that, I will say thank you. Thank you so much
thank you,
for hosting
Erin.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
stay
the
in
time.
touch.
Absolutely.
You have an open invitation to come back.
Thank you.
Anytime you want to. We really, really appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate you bringing up some of these darker things that we may not have thought that much about.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you keep doing good. I'm sorry, Johnny. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say before we let you go, I agree. We hugely, hugely appreciate this. I mean, as a survivor, I am so thankful to see people like you out there who are brazen enough to really take on this scandal head on. And you don't shy away from these darker topics. And when you see this manipulation, you call it out. So I thank you for your voice, and thank you for coming on tonight. And it was so good to see you.
You too. You too.
Very good to talk to you, Erin. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
All right. Thank you. Oh, that was wonderful. I do want to say that there is somebody, we were trying to be very mindful of Erin's time. And there's somebody who has been chatting in the chat, and I haven't brought her up yet, but it's a mom of a girl with rapid onset gender dysphoria in California. And she says she pays a ton of money out of pocket to get her true care. And then she noticed that it was very scary to think about CPS being called in. And I don't know who this is. It's numbers and all that. So it's probably somebody I know, but I don't know. It's very difficult, but God moved a non-affirming psychologist put in my path over a year before she came out as trans. And she says she responded the same way that Erin did, and told her she's not going to play into that idea, and that then she listed all the ways that she would not hurt her and the ways that she would support her and love her. And Chat GPT told my daughter she was being abused by us for not affirming. And she says, I honestly think people are too we are too comfortable talking about kids about being gay. I'm not quite sure, but at any rate, and she says, thanks for the show. So thank you, whoever you are.
Well,
for yes, Johnny.
I just wanted to say with the comment, I think honestly people are way too comfortable telling children that they are gay. I know in my family, my nephew was told because he talked a certain way he was gay, even though he wasn't. I have seen that before, unfortunately, where some guys might talk a little bit how I talk. And then society does seem to assume that they are gay. And I do agree with this commenter. We shouldn't be telling people that they are gay. That
gotcha.
is one of many, many things that people should just arrive to their own conclusions at. I don't think that that's something that we should, necessarily introduce, nor should we paint it to be a negative thing. That should just be something that, like, if you grow into it, you grow into it. You know what I mean? So I do think what the commenter is saying there.
Thank you, Johnny. I was lost. Thank you. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. We've got a huge crowd. I don't see anybody else commenting. So I guess we've come to the point at which we're going to rewind to gender news and talk about these developments.
Yeah.
We've got a crazy good audience.
It's because we had a hero on tonight.
Yeah, I guess so. We've been advertising it and all of that. So let's rewind to the news. And the first thing, are you ready to move on, Johnny?
Yes, I am. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Missouri governor signs bill banning hormones and surgeries for trans inmates. To me, this seems like, I don't know, you probably have a more informed opinion than I, but I think just abruptly, this is one of the things I've heard about in terms of immigration, is that people get put into immigration detention. They have diabetes, for example, and they won't, the detention center won't give them their what they need to control their diabetes. Or like the women that we talked about, I think last week, who died in Border Patrol custody. They were HIV positive and they wouldn't treat them, and then they got pneumonia and wouldn't treat them. So what do you think? I mean, I don't think you can just cut people off. The surgeries is a different question, but the hormones, I mean, you can't just.
Well, I mean, I think personally, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think that if you're in prison for something, I think this is a risk that people should take into account before they go to prison. I don't think that we should be offering, having the ability to do this as an adult, no matter my personal thoughts on it, it is a luxury, and part of being in prison is not having access to those luxuries. And at the end of the day, these hormones are prescribed to handle an emotional distress issue. And I feel like there are other ways for us to help these people cope in prison. They have therapy and such in prisons and jails. So I don't think that I support this this ban. I don't think that we should be offering these things to inmates. And on another note, taking it, from that particular inmate's perspective and talking about, the culture of prison, it puts these inmates, speaking from a male perspective, it puts them at a much higher risk of violence and assault within prisons being on hormones, because it feminizes your body, and you're in a prison, speaking from a male perspective, where you're surrounded by men. So it puts them in a very dangerous category, a very dangerous position.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of it in terms of connecting to like other people who are in prison. People go to prison for all sorts of reasons. They go for good reasons. They go for bad reasons. There are a lot of people who go to prison for things they didn't do. I'm not talking about, I don't think we're talking about starting people on hormones, which would be, I would not think that would be something, but somebody who's been taking hormones for years, potentially, Jessie was on hormones for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if she were just to be stopped cold turkey, but I think we have to look at it not, well, I don't have a problem with the surgeries part of it, but I'm not so sure about the hormones part of it. As I say, I wouldn't support starting somebody on hormones, but there are people are already in danger just by virtue of the fact that they've been sent to prison.
Oh, for sure. but it's the nature of the effects of the hormones that increase that quite substantially. I could definitely see if someone, like someone from my situation that was on them for years, being sent there and being cut off cold turkey. I could see where that could cause a great deal of distress, and it would require some medical oversight, because when you go off of the hormones initially, it kind of sends your body into like this endocrine shock almost. So it would require some medical oversight. However, I think that there is a differentiation that needs to be made between this particular form of treatment and certain other medications that, would be like a life or death situation, like for people with diabetes, for example, which of course, people with diabetes should have access to their medication in prison, because it's a matter of like life or death that can make them physically very, very ill and put their life at risk. When it comes to these medications, it's, I'm not saying that I have much more nuanced opinions when people are out in society, but when it comes to prisons and stuff, I think, I don't think it does as much harm to be cautious about this, or to not allow them in prisons. I don't see an issue with that myself. But that's
I
just
think we have Maya X in the chat. I think that's who this is. And she says, the horrific scandal, the other stuff you mentioned, I think she's talking about me talking about diabetes and HIV and all of that. But I think we should differentiate between, yeah, she says it's me. Good. Nice to see you, Maya. So nice to see you. I think we ought to differentiate between HRT and actual life-saving medication. And then she says we got to balance, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime over here, and avoiding cruel and unusual punishment over here. So I think that is, yeah, that's it. I mean, don't do the crime if you can't do the time is, I mean, that's a whole discussion on its own. But yes, I think we have to avoid cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, and I think we're getting into that area. So as you say, Johnny, it does bear some caution.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody says, I guess it's Darla. Oh, Darla needs to just jump on in here if you want to. Darla, her career has been working with inmates. That's what she has done for years and years and years. She says inmates are in mental distress already. When they stop HRT cold turkey, that mental distress goes ballistic. For sure.
Darla, we can put you on screen if you want to. I don't know that you want to. And some people are not as much, but yeah, I mean, I think Darla knows whereof she speaks. She's one of those people who she goes, no, that's okay. I don't blame you, Darla. I would keep, yeah.
But
I don't mean to put you on the spot. She's one of those people who does, like, she oversees like people's susceptibility to rape and all that kind of thing in prison. So she makes a very, very good point. PREA auditor. PREA. You've told me before what it means. If you want to type it out, I'll say that. But yeah, that Prison Rape Elimination Act. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever talked about my young friend that I met, and he and I became real involved in each other's lives. And he was convinced by his foster mother that he was trans. And when I got to know him, he was going by a female name and was wearing girls' clothes. He was, just a very vulnerable kid. And I was persuaded he was trans. I hadn't thought about all of this. And I advised him, he was staying at my house for a little while, and I was like, okay, if you're gonna wear a dress and sit in public, you got to sit with your legs together. If you're gonna shave your legs, this is how you do it. That kind of thing. So anyway, he ran away, ran back to his home, apparently his biological parents. He stole a truck. He smashed it into a tree, and he was booked in at a prison. And he was booked in not wearing his wig, with his real name. And he and I were on the phone all the time. He would call me all the time. And he would say, Miss Ellen, I've fallen in love. I want you to officiate at my wedding. And I'd say, I can't officiate at your wedding not having met this man. Who is this man? Well, he's somebody I met online. Have you ever met him in person? No. How old is he? Well, he's 20 years older than I am, but he loves me. And I would advise him things like, his name is Brian. I guess it's okay if I say it. I said, don't do anything foolish in prison, in jail or prison. Don't be turning tricks. Don't be, just wait it out, read the cookbooks, go to the Bible study classes, do all those things, but don't do the other stuff. And he called me one day and he said, Miss Ellen, I'm not trans. Oh, are you gay? Yes, ma'am, I'm gay. The last I heard from him, his loving foster mother, who was batshit crazy, and we were friends, and I just slow to pick up on these things. The last I heard, he was in San Francisco turning tricks. He was one of those kids who never had a chance. He just never had a chance. But so I think Darla makes a really fair point when she says they're already in mental distress. So, and you don't know what got them there.
Absolutely.
I mean, this kid never had a chance. He never had a chance. And I did my best to be there for him, but there was a limit to what I could do.
Well, and I will say it's really difficult, especially when you've already been handed a framework to interpret your distress through. It's really difficult to be put in a position, especially within that framework, where you're told the one thing that can solve the distress or help you cope with the distress is removed. I remember when I first went off of hormones, because the doctor had advised me to take a break and see what happens. And my distress went ballistic because I had all these fears and preconceived notions of what my life would look like if I started to develop these masculine traits. And I mean, my distress just went through the roof. It got really, really bad. And I would take a dose here or there that I had left over or something, because I would just so much fear at what my life would become like if I was off of this stuff for so long. And of course, I was lucky enough that when the WPATH files came out, that somehow entered my sphere via the algorithm. And that was enough for me to realize that the framework that I was handed was complete bogus, which, you know, led to my whole world collapsing. But, you know, there is a way out of the other side. You know, unfortunately, with many of these people, they've been handed this framework, and they can't see past that because the distress is so much. And then this framework that you're given of gender dysphoria, when you interpret your distress through that, then every feature of your body becomes wrong if it does not align with what you're told, or whatever your identified gender is, what you're told your life would be better if you present it as.
Yeah.
And then when you can't see beyond that, you know, of
Yeah.
course their mental distress is going to go ballistic. I guess that's where I was saying earlier, you know, I'm sure we have other ways within prisons, or at least we should make the resources available for these people to be able to cope, maybe in other ways, via psychotherapy and, you know, things like that. And, you know, they of course need medical oversight, especially if they are going to be taking away hormones, then they definitely need some medical oversight for that. I would agree that would be cruel and unusual punishment if they're just cutting them off and like throwing them into a cell. Like that would be horrible, because they're going to.
And I think that probably, based on what I know of these other situations, is that probably is what is happening.
Yeah,
and really, I would not assume that there are good programs like that in most prisons. There's a documentary just came out about prisons in Alabama. We might ought to have a movie night sometime and watch that together. The prisons are just, they're hellholes. Most of them are hellholes. So Maya says it is interesting and makes me think these stories of people who are more victims than criminals, because I watch a lot of true crime, as do I. It puts me to sleep at night and stuff.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. If I watch any, I mean, it's like some of the stories are just, some of them I can't watch, some of them I have to turn off. But to finish her, she says, because I watch a lot of true crime and stuff, I see too many monsters who I can't find sympathy for. Well, yeah, there are monsters out there that you can't find sympathy for, like the people heading up this transgender, you know, children thing. But yeah, there are plenty of actual monsters out there, but there are also plenty of people like Brian, who was not a monster. He just stole a truck and got drunk and wound up in prison. So, hey, y'all, like, subscribe, and share. So maybe we should move on. I didn't realize we were going to have so much to say about that. So okay, let's return to women models part of Paris Men's Fashion Week. Now, this interests me. Does it interest you at all, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, androgyny. So androgyny has always been part of the fashion world, especially when it comes to high fashion. So I'm not incredibly shocked by this. I do understand that some people, you know, think with it being, you know, a men's fashion, they think that it should only be like male exclusive, kind of like with women's fashion. You know, of course, you know, now in women's fashion, they let transgender models walk, but, you know, for the most part, we don't have like non-transitioning men walking in women's fashion week. So some people were like, oh, I feel like it should be separate. For me personally, I'm not very perturbed by it, just because of androgyny being part of high fashion for way beyond my lifetime. So what are your thoughts on it? I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, you think of people like Billy Porter. Do you know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He's a Black man who's always being being invited to things like the Met fundraiser. What do they call that? It's a big splash, and they have a theme. Well, he will show up with an extremely beautiful, well-made outfit that's like part men's tux on the top and then a big full skirt, all black. I mean, it's just very interesting
stuff.
Yeah, you can Google, anybody can Google Billy Porter. But this says that with Fashion Insiders, women have paraded through menswear collections for so many seasons that it barely registers. And it says, even as Gen Z mainstream only now catching up to the gender bending David Bowie flaunted in the 70s. Yeah, I mean, he was like a real gender bender. And there have been others like Keith Richards and, you know, the gender bending types. And there's a woman, tall, blonde hair, actor, can't say her name. She's quite gender bending. But he said, but the writer of this article said, in recent decades, fashion has moved from, quote, very binary understandings of gender and fashion to something which is today very fluid, reflective, he added, of how younger people now think. So I think what he's getting at is that part of what we're seeing is an acceptance of like what Erin was talking about with the Barbie doll on one end and the G.I. Joe on the other end. It's all getting blended together. And he said at Issey Miyake's I Am Mend, by the brand's account, the cast was entirely male, yet the show still read as androgynous. Issey Miyake is a Japanese designer. And I was in Japan about 18 months ago, and I was really taken by the emphasis on fashion and especially during the cherry blossom festivals. And there were some people I thought were just very interesting. But there were other people that I thought really creeped me out. Like women my age, dressed, and this would be a woman with a man dressed up like a little girl with a little bows in her hair and a little crinoline. You know, it was just way too, and you won't get this reference, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is like a cult classic from the 60s, I guess, with Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, I think. You know, it just would give me the creeps.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you putting on little girls' clothes when you're obviously 70 years old? Why? But then there were other things who were like, wow, that's cool.
Right.
You know, but it was all very performative, and maybe it's just me. Maybe I just wasn't comfortable with her look of the day, you know. And he said the border between his and hers keeps eroding on the body and on the calendar. This was translated from the French, and I don't know what it meant. On the calendar, I think it means on the body and in time or the moment. I don't know. It has not vanished, and its erosion owes as much to money as to gender. Androgyny only works because people understand what is being crossed, said Andrew Groves, menswear systems professor at the University of Westminster. Can you get a job? Menswear systems professor at the University of Westminster, which sounds like it's probably in England or Australia. The real story is not that menswear has escaped its rules, but that designers are finding new freedom inside one of fashion's narrowest rule books. The runways look like they are erasing gender. The categories are exactly what makes the gesture legible. That's one of the things you remember Erin Kimberly was talking about when it comes to courtroom situations. You have to make it legible. It has to be legible to the people on the outside. This season's men's clothes borrowed freely from women's wear. For Jonathan Anderson, Dior's first ever designer to oversee both its men's and women's lines, models oh gosh, I wrote too much on this. Wait now. I don't know. Okay, moving on. An aside on the evolution of high heels. The journey of the high heel, and I mentioned this earlier, from Persian men on horses in battlefields to French courts with men like Louis the 14th, and ultimately to the closet. Yeah, look at that. Look at that shoe. It's got a heel. It's also got a little strap, and it looks like some kind of a little bow. This is the King of France.
I know.
And what is he projecting? Huh?
I said those are cute shoes.
They
I
are
would wear those.
adorable. I would wear those shoes. Yeah. And what is he projecting? Well, he's not projecting powerlessness. He's projecting wealth and definitely power. I mean, look at that whole outfit.
Oh, yeah.
But those shoes are so cute.
Yeah, well, and King Louis the 14th was infamously known for, his luxurious outfits and his decadence.
Yeah, and then it wasn't too much longer after that the French Revolution and the guillotine came along.
Oh, yeah.
So it says, so these shoes have made it to what began as a masculine accessory of strength and authority has been transformed into one of the most iconic symbols of feminine glamour and empowerment. For example, Darla Christian Louboutin's black stiletto. There you go. Okay, of which now, and you can see they cost a cool $1,000, but you can get them in beige. I would not wear them simply because the stiletto is like 4 inches or 6 inches. But this is what Trina, who is a Southern hip hop, yep, there it is, Trina. Long heels, red bottoms. So she's talking about in that, and I'm sure you don't remember that, but it was this Southern hip hop where she's saying, and it's very catchy, and long heels, red bottoms, long heels, red bottoms, step, 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 step. And she's talking about she's going to get some of those Christian Louboutins, and she's going to be wealthy and powerful, and she's going to take charge. So I just find all that extremely interesting.
I mean, that's fascinating. And I don't know. I feel powerful when I'm wearing my heels. So I don't know. That's what I'm going to tell people now. I'm going to be like, this is a symbol of masculine strength and power, actually.
You were just not in the know.
Yeah. Actually, I'm just taking after King Louis the 14th. Even on my level.
You need to respect me for this. And then you've got to, have you ever heard Trina's long heels, red bottoms?
No, but I'm gonna have to go listen to it
You've
after
got
the show
to.
now.
It just, yeah, she gets a little, there is a dicey line or two in there, but it's just so catchy and was so big. Okay,
Darla
moving
says,
along.
Darla says it looks like torture to me, just saying. I will say those stilettos do look quite painful. The black
I
red
mean,
bottom ones.
it is. That's just it. Al remarked the other night, we were watching the women's basketball competitions, and they had two former basketball players doing commentary. And Al's like, why don't they be still? What's all this shifting back and forth and back and forth? And I'm like, Al, look what they have on their feet. Those shoes are, again with the stiletto, just, and I'm like, they're what they want to do is take those darn shoes off and probably play some basketball, but instead, I don't know. And of course they play into it, but yeah, it looks like torture to me too.
Oh yeah.
So, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm delighted that people are sticking around. We have a good crew in for this. And again, I've written too much. The complaint seeks answers on scouting America's transgender policy after the Pentagon deal. A gay rights activist is suing the defense, as we say in the South, the Defense Department to answer a simple question. Did Scouting America actually ban transgender members in a deal with the Pentagon? Now, what does the Pentagon care what the Scouts do? Why does the Pentagon care at all what the Scouts do? So James Dale filed a complaint in a New York City federal court Thursday, alleges that both sides have provided conflicting answers, while the Pentagon is refusing to release a copy of its agreement with the organization. The Pentagon made a deal with Scouting America in February that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said would refocus the organization away from the diversity initiatives and other woke policies. Hegseth threatened to cease the military's longtime support of the organization if it failed to comply in 6 months, which would be late in August. I mean, I have more information on that, but I mean, we've gone long.
Yeah.
Those programs, there are a number of programs out there. I don't think I realized that the Pentagon had anything to do with Scouts. I do know that Border Patrol has these programs. They try to get kids into it. Various police organizations do. Maybe Maya will remember from her crime shows about these. And it's just, they're enticing young children, into thinking in terms of in the future, I can be a Border Patrol agent. I can be a police officer, which is, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with, I mean, you do have to do recruiting, but you don't have to recruit in a way that is not ostensible that that's what you're doing. I just can't imagine the Pentagon caring. Okay, Darla says Trump signed an executive order in late January 2026 that said there are no transgender individuals. There is only male and female, and no funding would go towards transgender treatment support, etc. Yeah, but I'm still grasping how it is that the Scouts, if the Scouts get federal funding. Okay.
Right.
Okay. If the Scouts get federal funding, okay, well, that's a significant piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, why are the Scouts getting federal funding? Do you have a thought on that, Johnny? Because to me, it seems like,
I mean,
once you take money from people, you know,
yeah, I believe
it's like
that
churches getting tax exemptions, even though they are operating gyms which have payment structures. I just, but go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I believe that they do get some amount of federal funds just to like, she said, I don't know that they are, but so many organizations are taking federal money just because it's there. I believe that the Scouts get federal funding. Let me look it up. Do Scouts get federal funds? Yeah, so they do receive federal funding. It's just limited by scope and purpose. So if the current, administration that's running the federal government does not agree with how they are spending those funds, then I suppose I could see where they could interfere. I'm
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand the legals of it, but I just, the Pentagon is about protecting the safety and security of the United States. I mean,
yeah, I don't see where they all connect. But I will say also, of all of the news that we got this week, I would say this is the story I, am a little embarrassed to admit I'm not as in the loop on. But I'm not sure where the Pentagon would intersect with Scouts. I don't believe that there's a connection there. Because as you said, as I understood the Pentagon's purpose, it has to do with national security. But
I'm just scratching my head over that one.
Yeah, I'll have to do some reading into that and do some more research. Maybe I'll have a
I mean, I don't know that
comment on it.
Before you can comment on it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot. Oh, here we go, Darla. The Pentagon and Scouting America, formerly the Boy Scouts of America, are connected through a century-old partnership that has long supported military recruitment and provided community for military families. This includes providing logistical support for the National Jamboree, hosting troops on military installations, and offering advanced military rank to enlisted Eagle Scouts. There's a fine line there between that and trafficking. It's one thing to sign up somebody who's 18, even though I don't like that especially either, but you get them, offering advanced military rank to enlisted Eagle Scouts. Now, let's say you're a parent who has limited income, and like a lot of people who have a limited income, they think the military is a way out. So they're like, you need to be in the Scouts, you need to stay in the Scouts, you need to be, so that you can advance through the ranks in the military. I don't know. I'm scratching my head over that one. It just seems, somewhat sinister to me, but I can't really, put my finger on exactly why.
I mean, it's a recruitment program. I whether or not it fully leans into sinister territory, it's it's definitely a recruitment program. I guess that could depending on the individual experience, be positive or negative. But I don't know. I did not know
people. Yeah, the people I have known who were Eagle Scouts were extremely sweet guys and extremely naive about, and I think that would be true of, any, I don't know. We got to think about that one.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on 2 hours. Yes.
Yeah.
So if anybody else wants to put their head in and say something, that would be awesome. Y'all, please think about liking, subscribing, and how do you even subscribe to this?
I think that they just subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Oh,
or follow us on
whatever the social media is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they turn on notifications on any one of those platforms, it should ding them whenever we're doing a live.
So you'd call that subscribing?
No, it'd be like subscribe and turn on notifications.
Yeah. And share. Just talk about the show, however you get there, and direct people. Yeah, this is so important, the things we're talking about. We try to have a little fun with it, but at the end of the day, this is super important. And, if people are going to have strong opinions, I think they need to be informed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
Do you have any parting words?
I don't believe so. I was very thankful that we were able to have Erin on tonight. She's always a powerful speaker whenever she's on a platform, and is, of course, as you said, a powerhouse in this space and is a really strong advocate. So I'm glad we got to have her on and have some conversations. I'm glad we got to talk about the dark underbelly within this whole, I guess you could call it the trans industry, especially in reference to pediatrics. So yeah, I felt like this was a very productive conversation. And as we were just talking about, I hope that people like.
Johnny, can you shift the banner? Johnny Skinner is totally covering your face.
Is it covering my face?
Or pull your screen
It's not
down?
covering my face on my end. I'm trying.
It was on mine.
Okay, I'm trying to lean out of it on my end.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting. I don't know. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. You were saying something.
No, you're good. I was just.
You were talking about Erin. Yeah.
I was just gonna say for people to like and subscribe and turn on notifications and tune in for our next conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everyone has an outstanding rest of the day or the evening, as it may be. And I guess we will, Darla will end the stream and we will see you later. All right. Bye. We love you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We love you.